Assalamu alaikum and welcome back, everyone. It's like you've just joined me. Well, no, I hope not. I hope you've been with me all morning since 10 a.m. But if you have just joined me, then Assalamu alaikum. And I'm so glad you're here with us this morning. Now, we've just reflected on the importance of companionship and connection. And speaking of connection, our next guest is someone who is helping people bridge the gap between two powerful aspects of life: faith and business. Two very, very pivotal in survival in this world, to say the least. Joining us in the studio this morning is Omar DaCosta-Shahid, founder of Spirituality of Business. He's on a mission to help Muslim entrepreneurs bring their faith into the heart of their work. So what we build, earn and give back doesn't just serve the world, but also serves us and brings us closer to our Creator, Alhamdulillah. How incredible. So let's go straight to Omar. Assalamu alaikum, Omar, and welcome to the show. How are you?
Alaikum salam. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. I've been reading up a little bit about what you do. It's incredible. Aligning those two factors together, it's so important, especially for our ummah, who's very quickly growing into inspiring entrepreneurs. In the recent years, we've seen the rise of the Muslim entrepreneur this year in the last 3-4 years, quite drastic rise, and it's incredible to see that. But before we go really deep diving into business and spirituality, I want to know about Omar. Who's Omar? Like, what is the story behind Omar? Where does he come from? Tell us about you.
I think the usual stuff is to just share like your career trajectory and what you've normally done. I'll just share one thing. In 2015, I was thinking I want to detox from life a little bit, and get away, maybe learn some Arabic. So I thought, why don't I go to West Africa, Mauritania, which is a lot of it is Sahara, it's desert. So I stayed there for a short while, 3 to 4 months, detoxing from modern life, spending time with scorpions, and when I would walk out at night, you could just see the eyes of animals glowing. You couldn't see their body, and so it was a real experience. So I like to do fun stuff like that.
Yeah. Why did you choose that particular part of the world?
I knew somebody who'd stayed there for a couple of years, and for those familiar with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, he'd studied there. He'd kind of popularized it. Mm-hmm. So I thought, why not? We have one life. Why not experience the many facets of it? So spent some time there, which was really powerful.
Yeah, and how long were you there?
I think around 3 to 4 months.
Okay, brilliant. Tell me about the Omar that left, and then the Omar that came back. You're saying you went for a detox. How did you change all your narrative as a person, or your outlook? Anything that you'd like to share with us?
I remember one time actually sitting, praying in the mosque in Mauritania. And I was actually just like really upset. I was thinking, what have I been doing my whole life? I've just been wasting my life. Even though people might say, actually, you've had a productive up until then. I'd done a lot of things, but I was thinking there's so much more that I could be doing. Yeah. And I think over the past, 15 years or so, I've really been thinking about what is it that God wants from me, and by an extension, that's a question we should all ask ourselves. Is what is it that God has given us to help people, to have, what is that mission? Your niyyah is your mission, right? It's not just a fleeting intention, it's what's driving you. So all of us should have something driving us, and all of us have a different path. Yeah. And one thing led to another, lots of dua, and led me to the Spirituality of Business, which project I've been doing for the past few years.
SubhanAllah, that's amazing. And it's so nice to hear you say that, because quite often it's a question that we don't ask ourselves enough. And it's a question we don't ask each other enough. We sit in a lot of gatherings, meet a lot of people, network, whatnot. But how often do we ask each other, what's your purpose? What is your purpose in this dunya, in line with our faith, and also the impact you're going to leave behind? So subhanAllah, what you've just said is so I can really resonate with that, mashallah. Now, talking about spirituality of business, which is something you founded. Tell me a little bit about it. What inspired you to initiate it? And what's it all about?
So, Muhammad al-Shaybani, who was one of the great two students of Imam Abu Hanifa, he was once asked, why haven't you written a book on spirituality? And he said, I've written a book on trade. right? And he wrote a book called Kitab al-Kasb, which is basically the book of trade or the book of business. And in that book, he basically argues that through the difficulties, through difficult clients and difficult meetings and the stress of work and all that kind of stuff, the vexations, that in that is our path to God. So we actually can't divorce our work from our journey to Allah. They're one and the same. Whereas what today in our secular world, it's kind of like we have our private devotional life and then our separate work life. But actually they should be coming together. And in fact, we see this in both the Quran and the Sunnah where, the Quran talks about, for example, after Jummah, right? It says, go and seek the fadl, the bounty of God, which all the exegetes, translators, go back, basically go to work. Go to work. So we're not a monastic religion where we separate, like other religions where on the Sabbath it's only for, worship. And, and for example, even in Surah Al-Baqarah, it talks about, even on Hajj, right? Hajj, that special time, even then there's no blame on you if you do some work during that time, right? So there's no kind of hard division between our private acts of devotion and so in Islam we have our ibadat, which is our private worship, and then we have our mu'amalat, which is our social engagement with people. And the spirituality business, the spirituality aspect is the Latin word and the Arabic word ruhani, or spiritualitas, is to do with the spirit, the breath, something ineffable, something within us that connects to God. And then the business side is the mu'amalat. So it's bringing these two together, the vertical dimension, connecting to God, and then the horizontal dimension, which is connecting with people. And that's what the spirituality business is about. Is about bringing these two things together, which I felt was missing.
Do you feel like that's missing here in the UK and in the Western world, or across the globe?
I think it's probably a bit more prominent in the Western world. Although I think it's now a global kind of phenomena. And especially if you look at, for example, in the 1960s, there was a famous economist, and he basically said that the purpose of business is profit maximization. That's the only is to maximize profits for shareholders, which actually had a quite adverse effect on the way people perceive business over the next 40 to 50 years. And I think Muslims have fallen into that trap of secular thinking and divorcing our work and our faith. I think it's affecting us everywhere.
Because I noticed that, as in my primary years, I spent a lot of time in Muslim countries, Muslim continents, growing up, visiting families. And one thing I must resonate with that you've just mentioned is that, Jummah time, for example, they would just shut all the shops and they would all go for Jummah. And you could see the entourage of men walking towards the masjids in different parts of the city. And as soon as Jummah was over, it'd be a quick snack or lunch at home, and then the shops would open up again, subhanAllah. And I've noticed that the same countries that I visit now again, many of them don't shut for Jummah anymore, And it's like, okay, what happened? Have we changed our faith of the country, of the rulers, or sometimes they'll just shut for the whole day, and there's no barakah in that. And you're right, there's so much alignment in our faith, in our day-to-day living, that our faith brings barakah into, but we're just so blind to it at the moment. I think as we've gotten older, we've become more blind to it. And it's so nice to hear you bringing back that concept and changing that narrative again, mashallah. So now, obviously, in your spirituality of business journey, you've touched so many lives, so many businesses you've come across, mashallah. What kind of impact do you see you're having on these businesses and the lives of these entrepreneurs?
I think what I'm trying to do is get people to rethink how they approach business. So part of that is things like, how do you operationalize the golden rule, which is, love for your brother or sister what you love for yourself. How do you integrate that into your business? For example, when you're creating a product, thinking about the no harm principle, which is a Sharia principle. Don't cause harm or don't reciprocate harm. Especially if we're creating tech companies, how do we make sure we do that? And then actually, how do we create a business that does good in society? And then the final step is then how do you make a profit, right? So thinking about these steps. Rather than the reverse, which first of all thinking about profit. So people have given good feedback. I had one convert in Dubai. She said the community and connecting with like-minded people is transformed my life. I think reorienting how we see business. That it's more than just making money. It's actually, as the Prophet peace be upon him said, the best of you are those who provide the most benefit. So how do we provide the most benefit in our business, rather than just thinking about the bog standard businesses that don't really create much impact. We live in a time where we can massively scale our impact because we have technology, we have AI, we have these things. So I want Muslims to really think about how we can create maximum benefit through our businesses.
Yeah, inshallah. And most importantly, I think it's also the fact that we are now, for the first time in a very long time, beginning to use Muslim products and services. Muslim brands, halal or focused services and products, which makes a huge impact on your consumer base as well. Whereas before it was very much monopolized, and we didn't really think twice about using the local brother for his services. We'd go to the bigger shops, or even the local sister. Subhanallah. Now, so basically what you're saying, I'm trying to get my head around it, because I'm a business studies and economics teacher, and I was for 12 years. So when I'm telling my students to do business plans and, create a business idea and put it down, I'm talking to them about their demographics, their long-term objectives and their aims of the business, the vision statement. Would it be good advice for us to say that businesses that are Muslim focused or spiritually focused, they should have some sort of Islamic narrative to their vision statement or their mission statement?
So the first thing is that we don't necessarily need to Arabicify everything, right? So there's a difference between something which is kind of inherently Islamic, the essence of it, and then, for example, and then just having
a couple of calligraphy words.
Having like these hoodies which say like sabr and things like and in fact, if get into the essence of the product and how it's made is really important. So, for example, if you're creating clothing which is made in subpar conditions in parts of the world, exploiting people, that's not Islamic. No matter how many Arabic words you put on it, it doesn't change anything. So, in fact, our thinking needs to start from the production, and that entire process, and then even in terms of the way you market it. Marketing, we often copy just what's on YouTube by people who aren't Muslim, copying their tactics. But actually, we have a philosophy within our faith about how we do these things. Marketing should be transparent. It should be honest. It should be detailed. It should be descriptive. So these sorts of things need to be thought about. And even in terms of selling, your sales should be wanting good. So if someone doesn't need the product, don't force it down them. Don't get them to buy it just because you want to make a sale.
Just don't try and overcome the obstacle just because you need to make a sale.
That's right. So it's all about wanting good for others. How do you operationalize wanting good for others in your business?
Omar, all of those things you're saying, they're beautiful, and they make so much sense when you think about it, because it just means that at the end of the journey, you are an ethical product, an ethical brand, in alignment with your faith. And subhanAllah, that in itself is going to bring so much barakah into everything. And on top of that, you're selling to the people that need it. So your intention is being fulfilled. What is the impact of this kind of journey for a business? Has anyone given you that feedback yet?
So I think, again, remembering that your business is actually a path to God, but then also the societal dimension, which is how do you impact the most amount of people. And when you can bring both these things, two things together, it's really powerful, because people often ask, is profit a bad thing? Is making money a bad thing? It's not at all. I mean, 7 or 8 of the companions who were promised paradise were business people. 4 to 5 of them at least were multimillionaires, right? So, and with creating wealth, you maximize your impact, and wealth is a multiplier. So striving for wealth is actually a good thing. I think changing some mindsets around, not divorcing faith and business, striving for wealth is a good thing if you plan to do good things with it. Is all really, really important.
Let's dig a little deeper into that statement. Striving for wealth is a good thing. I want you to contextualize that for our audience, in particularly in essence of why it's a good thing for us as an ummah to strive for wealth.
So the first thing is that wealth creates influence, it creates impact. Muslims are being battered on the political level, on the economic level, on the social level, in pretty much in every way. And if we want to change society, impact society, you normally need wealth to do that. So, for example, Muslims who want to get involved in politics, you can use lobbying groups.
Absolutely.
Muslims who want to give more to charity, wealth can facilitate that. Muslims who want to change their local communities or create facilities for the youth. You can't do that without money, right? So
money definitely. Money runs the world. It talks. Money talks, And if you're a faith-centric business and you're making wealth, you have the power to impact areas and places and sectors which are not faith-run, which we are still a marginalised minority within. And subhanAllah, you know what? There's brothers like Omar and alike who are taking a stand, making a difference, changing that narrative, and promoting our brothers and sisters to become entrepreneurs that are, centric to faith, yet aiming towards wealth in the dunya and inshallah wealth in the akhirah as well. Now, talking about wealth and talking about entrepreneurs, you've got people watching, and inshallah, the show does repeat itself, so there'll be more brothers and sisters watching us later on tonight as well. Now, if they're sitting on an idea and they're thinking, okay, I want to start a business, this brother Omar has inspired me this afternoon, this morning, whatnot. What is that one faith-centric, practical first step you would advise them to take?
So I would say you should do like a self-audit, like a understand your why. Why do you want to set up a business? First of all, entrepreneurship is not for everybody.
No.
But if you believe it is for you, then create a business in line with the life that you want. Don't create a business according to what other people say you should create. You may not want to create a big conglomerate or something. You may want a small lifestyle business. But once you've done that, there are some practical steps, to take, thinking about, because spirituality is also a very practical endeavor, thinking about how much personal runway do you have? Do you have enough money for the next 12, 18, 24 months, because your business might not make money? And then thinking about, does your product have product market fit? Try to sell it to 10, 15, 20 people and see if they buy it, because you want to get that early testing to see if the product needs it. But then ultimately, on the spiritual dimension is, making sure you understand why you're doing it, that you have the right niyyah, which is, like I said, more than just a fleeting intention. It's your inner compass, it's your drive, it's why you're doing it. And make sure that you're doing it fundamentally for good, which is for God. And then the reason we earn money is to provide for our dependents, our family, to give to society. And then, as the Prophet taught us, you keep just enough for yourself, which keeps you sufficient. So as long as you have those things in place, you're thinking about the practical side. You're not going to put undue hardship or stress on yourself. You've got personal runway to cover yourself. You're thinking about, is the product right for the market? Is it going to sell? And then thinking about your niyyah and why you're doing it, and your ultimate, what you want to do with the money, because people might end up with a lot of money. What do you do with it then? And you don't want to wait till you've made all the money and then think about giving it back. You want to do it along the process as well, to purify your intentions. So think about all those different dimensions.
SubhanAllah. So to kind of just bullet point it, you're saying good market research is definitely very pivotal. But the niyyah, you mentioned niyyah quite a lot, and I love that, because it's very intentional. Your business, your idea, your innovation is very intentional. So your niyyah, as in the product or the service that you're about to launch, but most importantly, when it is a success, and inshallah it will be, because your niyyah is so integral to it all. If it's pure and it's going to benefit you and the ummah and the people that you're creating that product service for, what is your niyyah towards the money that you're going to make from it? And, subhanAllah, you've made a decent amount and it's covering all of your costs and revenues and whatnot. What are you going to do with it? How is that money now going to even prosper further and make it better for the world, for the ummah, for people that really, really need us, whether it be at charity or local community, where we live, etc. And we've seen these cases so many a times, Many a times we've had our masjids, our local community centres built built by local entrepreneurs, brothers and sisters who are successful in their business, mashallah. And I think this is kind of very, very centric to what your initiation is with spirituality of business. Now, you personally, like as Omar, how do you define the connection between spirituality and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think so. The spirituality part is your connection with Allah, and the entrepreneurship side. The entrepreneur is someone who essentially takes risks. I mean, I think it's from a French word. So the idea is that an entrepreneur is a risk taker, and the risk taker by default it has to have a lot more tawakkul, right? Because you're not relying on a wage, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at Prophet Sallam, he had a mudaraba contract with Khadija. Mudaraba is you have a capital provider and someone who commits the time and the effort. So this idea of entrepreneurship of being in business is inherent within our faith. We see it in the Sunnah. We see it among many of the companions. The companions who were business people were praised and could utilize that money for good. Abdurrahman ibn Auf would give a lot for the military expeditions, and Abu Bakr and Omar would give a lot for the charity and for the community. Uthman, utilized his wealth in Medina for the well, for waqf and all these kinds of things. So bringing the two together, spirituality, your connection with God, and entrepreneurship, which is also inherently a spiritual activity because you have to have that reliance on God, come together actually really well.
Okay, amazing. Now, we spoke about a couple of trends. As I mentioned, I have certainly noticed from my youth to now, I'm still very youthful, the rise in the Muslim entrepreneur, Muslim products, Muslim services. And I think what's happened around the world on a global scale in the last few years has also seen us kind of stand up and bring our own products out, bring our own services out. Which really kind of intrigues me to, and makes me want to know more. In your opinion, what trends are you, as somebody who's initiated this, noticing at the intersection in particular of our faith, our business and our modern entrepreneurs?
I think one of the things we should be careful about is making sure that we're authentic, Islamically authentic with the way we run our businesses and do our marketing. For example, you see all these Muslim entrepreneurs copying the exact same playbook of, look at my car, look at me in this nice 5-star hotel. This is what I did through my business. Like, that doesn't feel quite authentic to our faith, especially just copying. So I think Muslims, we have a duty upon ourselves to study our faith and understand what is the prophetic way of conducting ourselves and conduct. There is no one way, first of all.
Okay.
And there is such a term as urf, which is the customs of your time. So taking the best from your time, but the urf should match with the Sharia. So the point I'm making is that, like, don't just take anything and everything which looks good and you're just copying trends, because a trend is not always a good thing. You want to make sure that there's a basis within our faith. So, and the more you study the seerah, and the more you study the companions, the Prophet said, all of my companions are like stars, so whichever one you follow, you'll be rightly guided. So the more you study our faith, the more of an authentic Islamic way of running your business you will have. So I would avoid just trends of just like what you see on TikTok and what kind of the average non-Muslim is doing.
That shouldn't be your means of inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Omar, what kind of books, resources, platforms should I be looking at reading? How do I find you, most importantly? Tell me.
So I would encourage everyone to really, there's two things. In fact, I'll just say one thing. Study the seerah.
Yeah.
And it's not that the seerah is a book of business, right? It's not. But the seerah and of course the Quran are a book of principles.
Yeah.
And if you can understand these principles, you can then derive your ethics and your spirituality from them and apply them into your business.
Yeah.
So it's not the case that you extract a particular, like you do have the fiqh of business, right? You can study that, but the spirituality of business is that, but more, which is your connection with God, and you can understand how to connect with God by studying the seerah. So I would encourage everyone to study the seerah, to learn how the Prophet interacted with people, how he engaged with people. And even if it's within a different context, a different domain, where it's not business related, you can still see how the Prophet interacted and utilize that in your business.
Yeah.
So that would be the number one thing. And also, Omar radiallahu anhu, he said that anyone who doesn't learn the rules of trade will fall into riba, right? So that there is a concept that if you don't study what's mandatory for you, so you have your fard al-ain, which is what's mandatory upon you, which extends beyond business. But if you are in business, if you're an entrepreneur, it becomes mandatory upon you to study the rules. And then there's not that many. You can learn it within a few weeks. Or,
that's good to know.
So learn the basic rules, which you can do. There's plenty of teachers around. And then spend time ideally with the teacher studying the seerah, so you can internalize the prophetic way of being and then implement that into your business.
Okay, amazing. And if people want to reach out to you?
I'm mostly active on LinkedIn.
Okay, LinkedIn.
I also have a newsletter on Substack.
Okay,
Omar DaCosta-Shahid. But feel free to reach out to me.
So what do we find you as on LinkedIn?
Omar DaCosta-Shahid.
Okay, everybody heard it here. Omar DaCosta-Shahid. Love your double barrel name, by the way.
Thank
It's
you.
got such a cool ring
Thank
to
you.
it.
All my family on my mum's side are DaCostas.
MashaAllah, that's nice. Okay, so Omar DaCosta-Shahid on LinkedIn, and they can message you and ask for your advice and just follow you and see all the stuff that you're posting and things that you're advising to us.
Yeah.
What does the future hold for spirituality in business?
Unfortunately, it's not a full-time thing for me yet.
Okay.
I have a business called Rat Race Revolution.
Okay.
And within that, we have a product called the Halal, which is a mastermind for Muslim entrepreneurs to work together to grow their businesses.
Amazing.
And inshallah, in the near future, I would love to dedicate a lot more time to spirituality business. And I occasionally get asked to give talks. I gave a talk recently in Zurich and Malaysia and so on. So hopefully, more talks, and I'd love to conduct courses. So, for example, at the moment I'm studying Imam Ghazali's book 13 of the Ihya with one of my teachers. Once I finish studying that, I'd love to teach that as well.
Yep.
So kind of more of those courses where Muslim entrepreneurs can learn how classically Muslim scholars understood business, but then also add on top of that, our modern context. So how do you learn about how our faith and the scholars talked about business, but then make it relevant for today? And I'd love to kind of do a lot more of that.
Well, inshallah, we'd love to have you come back and talk about that once you're ready to do your workshops. Maybe some of our crew and us will join you and take some inspiration from you as well, inshallah. And your full-time business, you were saying, is Rat Race Revolution. So go and find Omar on Rat Race Revolution as well if you like, and also remember to follow and contact him with regards to spirituality and business. Omar, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show this morning. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again in the very near future, inshallah. Thank you. Now, mashallah, what an inspiring young man Omar has been for us this morning. Such inspiring words. And so much wisdom, and that's the one thing that really, really inspires me at the moment. And I keep coming across these young people, young brothers and sisters who are so inspiring and so wise for their age, mashallah. May your work continue to inspire and uplift many more on their paths and journeys of entrepreneurship, inshallah. Now, don't go anywhere. Salaam Britain continues right after our very, very short break. I'm going to be bringing you a mouth-watering cooking segment.